This is BBC One. Now at 10 o'clock, the news with Fiona Bruce.
America steps up the pressure in Iraq, promising overwhelming combat power. The death toll from yesterday's double helicopter crash now stands at 17. A man is charged with the murder of the Devon teenager, Alicia Eborn. Johnny Wilkinson boots England straight into the World Cup final. And after the news, letting down those who need help the most, Panorama investigates alarming failings in how we provide care at home for older people. Good evening. The United States has responded to the growing attacks on its troops in Iraq by launching a satellite-guided missile at a guerrilla training camp in the north of the country. Such a missile, carrying a 500-pound explosive, hasn't been used since Saddam was toppled in May. The death toll from yesterday's crash involving 2 US helicopters now stands at 17. Investigators are trying to establish whether the helicopters were shot down.
Time once again to pick up the pieces as America mourns the costliest single blow to its forces since the start of the Iraq War. It's still not known whether the 2 helicopters crashed by accident or whether one was fired on from the ground and hit the other. But there are strong suggestions that this was a missile attack. In the last fortnight, 4 US helicopters have been brought down. On November the 2nd, a Chinook was lost near Fallujah, killing 16 soldiers. 5 days later, a Black Hawk was destroyed near Tikrit, killing 6. Yesterday's incident in Mosul, with the loss of 17 lives, brings the number of helicopter-related deaths to 39.
It's a very difficult problem here. Saddam Hussein bought literally thousands of these shoulder-held surface-to-air missiles from the Soviet Union. We don't even know how many thousands there are. We've been buying them back on the open market. We've been capturing them due to good tips from Iraqi informers. We just have to keep at it.
On the ground, American troops are keeping at it with added vigor. The US response to the latest attacks has been Operation Iron Hammer. It sounds and looks forceful, but it could well lose America's support among those civilians it affects. Critics say on the military and the political fronts, it's time to escape.
There's no reason to wait until June to give the Iraqis back their country. We should be transferring that authority tomorrow.
The president arrived back at the White House acknowledging that this was a sad day, but adding the key message that political progress was now being made. This week, he'll do his best to sell that idea. The next big political hurdle for the president is, of course, his state visit to Britain. There will be demonstrations and they will not be helpful, but there'll also be the presence of Tony Blair. Mr. Blair is still a big figure in American politics. Mr. Bush will hope that the Prime Minister can help shore up support for his Iraq policy on both sides of the Atlantic. Justin Webb, BBC News, Washington.
Well, as we've just been hearing, President Bush arrives in Britain this week. To mark the occasion, he's given an exclusive interview to the BBC in which he strongly defends the invasion of Iraq and his relationship with Tony Blair. Mr. Bush told Sir David Frost that he went to war because Saddam Hussein was a dangerous man who had to be tackled.
His administration may now believe it's come up with a clearer exit strategy in Iraq, but President Bush has a message as he continues his charm offensive before heading to Britain.
No, you're the Lord.
The US will stay around to support the planned handover of power to the Iraqis.
They need to know that we won't leave the country prematurely. They need to know 2 things. We're not going to cut and run. And 2, we believe they have the capacity to run their own country.
The reality of security in Britain. For more remembrance ceremonies at the Cenotaph today, 5,000 police will provide unprecedented security during Mr. Bush's visit. He acknowledges that America's September the 11th wake-up call drives him.
Terrorists declared war on the United States of America and war on people that love freedom, and I intend to lead our nation, along with others, like our close friends in Great Britain, to win this war on terror. That war is my last choice, not my first choice, but I have an obligation as the president to keep our country secure.
Which means the British and other detainees at the US base at Guantanamo Bay still finding themselves in a legal no man's land, one of the issues between Mr. Bush and Tony Blair this week.
I'm working closely with Tony to come up with a solution that he's comfortable with. And I emphasized a solution that he's comfortable with. These prisoners are being treated. These were illegal non-combatants picked up off of a battlefield. And they're being well treated, and they will go through a military tribunal at some point in time.
They may disagree on some things, but Mr. Bush has effusive praise for a leader who's stood by America. He likes the conviction politician in Tony Blair.
The key to my relationship with Tony is he tells the truth. And he tells you what he thinks, and when he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. I trust him, therefore. I've seen him under some tough circumstances stand strong, and I appreciate that in a person.
Both leaders know Iraq is likely to overshadow the rituals of this state visit, and the protesters want to make sure it does. Mike Aldridge, BBC News.
A 39-year-old man has been charged with the murder of Devon teenager Alicia Eborn. Police found her body earlier today in Woodland on Dartmoor. Lee Holbrook, a bus driver from Plymouth, will appear in court tomorrow.
This has been an extensive operation, more than 80 officers, some from outside forces, searching a number of locations on the edge of Dartmoor. Today they no longer had any expectations that they would find 18-year-old Alicia Eborn alive. This was now a murder investigation. Their efforts focused on this spot, a densely wooded valley along the River Tavy. A detailed search led to a discovery that confirmed the very worst fears of Alicia's family.
We've come to this place today and we have found a body. That body is of a young woman. We believe it to be Alicia Eborn. We have told Alicia's parents.
Alicia went missing 9 days ago after leaving home in the morning to walk half a mile to a bus stop. From there, she was to travel to college in Plymouth, but she never arrived. Police were called when she failed to meet friends as arranged that evening. The investigation has involved house-to-house inquiries and searches along the route Alicia would have taken to college. But the area where her body was found was not along that route and almost 15 miles from her home in Corntown. Police have been carrying out forensic examinations at the site. They still await formal identification.
A 39-year-old man being questioned here by Devon and Cornwall police in connection with Alicia's disappearance has tonight been charged with her murder. He'll appear before magistrates tomorrow morning. Daniel Bircher, BBC News, Plymouth.
The French President Jacques Chirac has visited the Saint-Nazaire shipyard where 15 people died yesterday when a gangway collapsed, leading to the luxury cruise liner the Queen Mary 2. Many of those on the gangway fell 50 feet onto the ship's dry dock. A judicial inquiry has begun. The new Shadow Home Secretary, David Davis, has said he's in favour of the death penalty for serial murderers. Conservative Central Office has stressed the views are his own and not party policy.
Law and order, the newest, biggest worry for many people. And today, from the latest politician to join that debate, a view guaranteed to get our attention. Bring back the death penalty for serial killers. The new Shadow Home Secretary, David Davis, was clear. It was his view, not his party's. But he was convinced he was right and said so.
Serial murderers, where there is clear evidence, there's really no doubt. If you've got DNA evidence in multiple murders, there'll be absolutely no doubt. And secondly, that it's obviously premeditated. This is a policy which is actually personal to individuals. It's not one which is a party policy, full stop.
Tories in death penalty storm.
And it won't become Tory policy. Capital punishment's always been about personal conscience for MPs, as senior Conservatives were quick to point out.
This isn't party policy. I very much doubt that it will become party policy. I certainly always voted against it. And if my recollection is right, Michael Howard always voted against it. So I think this is David expressing a personal view that many people will agree with, but it isn't party policy.
Suddenly, now the Tories have put their leadership troubles behind them, there's more interest in what Michael Howard and his shadow cabinet have to say. Michael Howard opposes capital punishment, but he's secure in his job. He can live with the fact that David Davis, like much of the public, disagrees with him. More significantly, on this sensitive issue of crime and punishment, the main opposition party spokesman seems ready to stick his neck out. John Pienaar, BBC News, Conservative Central Office.
Britain's employers are warning that red tape and extra taxes are making the country less attractive to investors. The CBI, which begins its annual conference in Birmingham tomorrow, wants the government to act now to stop jobs and investment going abroad. Police in Turkey believe suicide bombers with possible international links were responsible for yesterday's attacks on 2 synagogues in Istanbul. Israel's foreign minister has laid a wreath outside one of the bombed buildings. It's now known that 23 people were killed in the explosions.
A somber day of grief and reflection, and for Turkey's Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan, a time to pray and contemplate a changing political landscape. Terrorism is no longer national, it has international dimensions, he told them. Humanity is paying a high price for the causes of these terrorists. That price is being paid here. The families waiting for confirmation that loved ones died in the blasts. They're expecting bad news. Still, when it comes, it is devastating. The Israeli foreign minister made a hurried visit to both bomb sites, a determined effort to stress the officially warm relationship between Israel and Turkey, a relationship not always reflected at street level. Turkey is an overwhelmingly Islamic country. The war in neighboring Iraq and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict are hardening attitudes. That's left many people here deeply suspicious of the West and the United States in particular. The challenge for the government is to act decisively against international terrorism while not being seen to sign up to an American agenda. And so, after a weekend of tragedy which killed Jews and Muslims, this country's leaders are facing difficult choices. Jeremy Cook, BBC News, Istanbul.
Now with news of how England's rugby union team made it to the World Cup final and all the rest of the day's sport, here's Rob Bonnet.
Thanks, Fiona. Good evening to you. Well, England rugby captain Martin Johnson said it was a fantastic win, which left head coach Clive Woodward anticipating his dream final against Australia. These are the reactions to England's 24-7 victory over France in the Sydney rain almost 12 hours ago. And once again, Johnny Wilkinson was the point-scoring hero. 5 penalties, 3 drop goals, but no English tries.
An outsized England captain, some fired-up French, and the Johnny Wilkinson fan club, appearing in Sydney today. And here's Johnny again, a smart drop goal to put England into an early lead.
He has done it, and first points for England.
France responded though, Serge Betson grabbing the ball, just about reaching the line and putting his side ahead.
Did he get it down?
England's captain was feeling the stress. The players were feeling their injuries and the fans outside were feeling wet. But Wilkinson, well, he was just feeling good. 2 more drop goals.
He's second in the match.
And 5 penalties as England took control.
Safely through.
Just time for some royal acclaim before the final whistle. Cue an outpouring of delight from a squad who now face Australia in the World Cup final. England are determined to win.
If we come second in this tournament, we're going to be very, very disappointed. And you know, we came with one objective, to win it, and we've now 1 game away from achieving that. And I'm just personally delighted we're playing against Australia.
So it's been a cold and wet day, and it was a pretty ugly sort of match. But England's fans won't care about that, because they've beaten France. And thanks to Johnny Wilkinson, they're in the World Cup final. Adam Parsons, BBC News, Sydney.
Well, for England's footballers, meanwhile, a 3-2 defeat today at Old Trafford by Denmark. It capped several days of friction between the squad and the FA Chief Executive Mark Palios over the issue of player discipline.
A knowing smile and a raised eyebrow from the England captain aimed at the FA's Chief Executive Mark Palios, the man at the centre of the row that's been the talk of the England dressing room. The problems haven't distracted Wayne Rooney, though, showing no signs of the flu he was suffering from earlier this week. England failed to pick up on this, though, and Martin Jørgenssen's simple finish levelled the score. But the youngsters up front put England ahead again. Rooney passed to Joe Cole, who was obviously delighted with his effort. Defensively, England looked shaky tonight. A poorly timed challenge from Matthew Upson got the Danes a penalty. Martin Jørgensen, already on the scoresheet once, coolly made it 2-2. Second half goalkeeper Paul Robinson made save after save, but couldn't do anything about this one. In defeat, England just seemed relieved to have the fixture over.
It was nice to go out onto the pitch and actually kick a football around and enjoy that for a while instead of putting out statements and getting involved with that.
Tonight's scoreline reflects the problems that the England team had in defence here at Old Trafford. The real challenge now, though, is working on the fragile relationship between the football team and the English Football Association. Sally Nugent, BBC News, Manchester.
And you can see highlights of the match on BBC One at 11:10 this evening. To golf now, and South Africa have won the World Cup on the Kiowa Island Ocean Course in South Carolina. Trevor Immelman and Rory Sabatini came in at 13 under par for the 4 rounds. That was 4 shots clear of England, with France 1 further shot adrift. It's South Africa's 2nd win in 3 years. Stephen Hendry has won the British Open Snooker Championship in Brighton. A concession in the 15th frame by opponent and arch-rival Ronnie O'Sullivan left him winner by 9 frames to 6. It's the 4th time he's won this title, and he collects a first prize of £52,000. And a short while ago, Roger Federer was leading Andre Agassi by a set to love and 2 games to love in the Masters Cup final in Houston before rain stopped play. That's it, Fiona.
Thanks, Rob. Now let's get the latest on the weather with Rob McElwee.
Thanks, Fiona. Not been a bad day, I don't think anyone's going to complain. A good deal of sunshine, average temperatures. There was some rain. In fact, Wales suffered quite a few heavy showers. But with 8 hours in Torquay of sunshine and 13 degrees Celsius, aha. The next few days will look a bit different. We'll all get more than 13 Celsius, but we won't get as much sunshine. And yes, we will get the rain. All because the wind direction's changed. This feed wind, this is the forecast for the next 3 days, is coming from the deep tropical Atlantic. So yes, it will be warm. In fact, by Tuesday it could be 16 or 17 degrees, and that is without the need for sunshine, because we won't get very much. Already the skies are turning cloudy, the rain is starting to fall in Scotland and Ireland. And although it has got cold enough for a touch of frost in eastern England, it's to show how warm it is, it's 10 degrees Celsius now on the west coast of Ireland. And this is, of course, at 10:15 in the evening. Now, once this cloud has really fed across the whole of the UK, which we'll do tonight, we've got this whole line to go through us before it stops. Now, that is going to last about 3 days. So some places are going to get very wet. A couple of inches of rain in this persistence, I think. Most likely it'll hit western Scotland, but maybe northwest England, maybe North Wales. We'll keep you updated on that over the next day or so. However, by the time we get to tomorrow morning, it may not have rained yet in the southeast corner of England. It will probably everywhere else. And as that rain will be in and out, yes, some bright weather will be around. But a pretty miserable afternoon is going to greet us, with the wind strengthening, and temperatures, though not as high as Tuesday, will surprisingly be slightly higher than today's. Fiona.
Thanks, Rob. And that's the latest news tonight. And now, fresh this week from celebrating 50 years on BBC One, Panorama.